Good evening. It's Christian Hermit, and got interrupted. My lovely neighbor brought over, they're leaving for the week, and brought over some chicken soup that she had made. Chicken stew, she called it. She's an excellent cook, and left a container in the fridge, but I shut off, and that was okay to stop at that point on, we'll call that part one. But, and I'd also then forgotten to mention that still on the train headed toward down through France, but we had just stopped at Salzburg, and this Father Martin Schlag had gotten off there. This Opus Dei priest who was stationed at the time at St. Peter's in Vienna, where the Opus Dei oblature, that order of priests, and that religious order, which many of you know have heard of Opus Dei. It includes groups of married couples and vocations for all kind of people, active vocations in the church of different aspects of doing things without being a monastic and things. So he got off there and had said, meet me or come back. When you come back, feel free, please stop by St. Peter's and see me. So, and we'd talked pretty much the whole trip because I spied him in his priest garb. That's how I saw him there. If he hadn't had the priest garb on, who knows what would have happened to me later. So, but also when Tomas from Germany had come, he also set up for me hotel and everything, got everything set up. I was going to pay for it, but he did all this laptop. He knew his way around France and things and around Germany. Obviously, he lived in Germany. So he got everything set up for me. I was going to spend 2 or 3 nights in Annecy, France, where, and then the extra days, I think it was maybe 4 days and 3 nights there in Annecy, France. Hanging around St. Francis de Sales. He was a bishop there, and the monastery, the Visitation, is right there where Saint Jane de Chantal had been. I think I also took a book of Saint Jane with me to a biography to read during this retreat time. And so, and then I had my divine office and different things. So I was plenty, I had enough books, but not too many because of my suitcase. I just had one suitcase. Um, so that, and then after Annecy, I was going to go up into southern Germany to Bavaria. My mother had given me a photograph before she died, maybe like 4 or 5 years prior. But after I was Catholic and after she'd gotten over being angry and my dad had been angry, but it was a picture of some of her relatives, cousins, probably fourth or fifth cousins, over in an area near Stuttgart, little town. They're still there. This picture was taken maybe in the late 1960s or early 70s at the time. But she said there would still be some of their children would be there. In the photos, the people looked to be in their 50s, so they would probably be her age and probably deceased or maybe in their late 80s. And they were all standing by a statue of our relative, this Count Eberhard, who I found out is a saint. Isn't that exciting? And my mother gave it to me and she says, well, she says some of our family was Catholic, and they still were when they were visited. She didn't visit, but some other relatives went to visit them, and the Eberhards over in Stuttgart area. So, so that was it was a big thing for my mother to admit and accept that, and that her own daughter had become Catholic was hard. And my dad, oh my, it broke his heart. So, but he's okay now. He's let me know from the other side. He did shortly after he passed. He let me know. He wasn't in heaven yet, but he was able to let me know how pleased he was with me, very proud of me. So, but so anyway, that was all set up. Tomas had everything arranged. And so nice and kind, and so good to see him. And I saw him once after he and Gisela came over and visited me in my Agnus Dei. And I wish I don't have his email. Um, so I had an older computer, and I don't know. Anyway, I'll try to get a hold of him through my friend Rod, through his brother, his his student exchange student brother. Very close, wonderful families. So so I get on into through Salzburg, get into um, down into France. Becomes nighttime. I try to sleep on the train. He got me one of these things, you could just sleep on a berth. And sometime the next morning, we just kept going and going in this train. We, meaning me and God and my guardian angel. And I remembered, I kept repeating the name of the town in France I was supposed to get out to make the change for the next leg of the trip. And I fell asleep, and by the grace of God, literally, I woke up just hearing the train slow down and this man call out the name of the town, and I got up and got my stuff and transferred. I think I had a transfer. Tomas would know. My mind, everything I've lived through since then has been just so much. And then all my pain. I said, my mind isn't as good. I mean, I could, when you can tell yourself it's bad. So, and I've told my daughter who's here, my other kids I haven't talked to about it, but she's probably said something to them. But, so, but I get on the right train, get the rest of the way. And by then it's daylight, and we're coming into Monterey, or no, Marseille, not Monterey, Marseille, down by the Mediterranean. And it's maybe like around 11 o'clock in the morning. And I was so concerned about getting off at the right place because I hadn't had French since college. And I only had one semester in college. I just took the requirement. I'd had it in high school, 3 years of French. But yeah, I was rusty with French. And the accents, of course, are very different from what we learn in American high school with an American teacher. So, as good as she was, Madame Hillegas. So I got off, and it took me a while to get a bus or what I needed to get the transport into Gien. And of course, I was exhausted also, and the bumping and all. But I did have a berth. I could lay down and sleep, and I did sleep somewhat, except for concern of, oh my goodness, how am I going to know when to get to this, make this changeover at that certain point? So but finally got into the means to get from Marseille to Gien. And by then, though, I had to go to the bathroom. I really had to go to the bathroom. So but I got there, and I had the little map of how to find his apartment. He'd drawn out a little map, or maybe had one with his packet, because they rent their apartment out when they aren't using it in the summer. It's partly an investment for them. They were, so they were teachers, and that's part of their investment. And so, and they'd have friends could use it and different things like that. And me, and he didn't charge me a thing for it. I offered, but he didn't want to. Wanted it to be a gift. So we, I get there. I find it walking through this town. At first, I had to stop. There was a little bakery, and I stopped there, patisserie. I stopped there, and somebody could speak a little English in there, not much, but one of the clerks during the day. And she sort of pointed the way to the street and to where that apartment building. So I get up there and I'm like, oh, good, because I really had to go. And I get in there and the key wouldn't work. The key wouldn't work. And I had my cell phone, but I couldn't use my long distance card with it. I had some kind of deal that had to be like a phone with a certain, I don't know how it was, but or either that or my something. I could not just call this Madame Lafarge with my cell phone. It was one of those little flip top things. Um, it wasn't international, so I had an international card to use at a phone booth. That was the deal. And oh my gosh, I was just in agony and I couldn't get that door open. So I thought, I don't know where she lives or anything. I mean, I had her address. I thought maybe I can walk there. I didn't know how far it would be, but it was a village. It wasn't huge. But then here's all this land. Maybe the little town wasn't huge, the village, but the space around it with these hills and on down into the toward the sea and all. So I went outside and I just started calling out. Is there anyone? Because I'd see people, often. Is there anyone that speaks English? And so one person came over to me and they couldn't speak English and I couldn't follow. I mean, I was showing them that and pointing and the number and trying to gesture that I needed to call telephone, whatever little words I could remember and hand motions. But then there was this field across the way. I was out in this parking lot, out by the end of it, and there were other big apartment buildings around too with their parking lots. Not just Tomas's building, and he was up, I think, on the second floor, and it was a lovely apartment. But I mean, I hadn't been in it yet. But so I up out from this field walks this woman along a path. She says, I can speak English. And she had a thick French accent, but she spoke great English. And she says, I can help you. What do you need? And I explained. She says, well, my apartment's just right over here. I'll go there. We can call from there. And then she can come. This Madame Lafarge can come with a key or something. So we did that. She called this Madame Lafarge, and Madame Lafarge came, and I used her. No, I didn't. Did I use her bathroom then? Surely I must have. I did. Yes. Because I was ready to burst. I was about ready just to wet everything. So I anyway, yes, so her apartment did that, and I was so exhausted, and so I, I, I don't perceive like other people. I've been helped to understand this. When I'm in a place, it can be very, very overwhelming, and some of you are probably like this that have mystical things happen. It's like an overload of sensation, and because you're very sensitive, very extrasensory. And then with the my gut about my bladder about ready to split, and tired, and then here's this stranger, and I just had to trust and go. And she seemed nice enough, and she was a little younger than me, but not much. Maybe she was in her 40s. And she told me that she had grown up in California, that she'd been a foster child there. And that's how she knew English and had been through high school there, but was French by birth. Obvious, her language and everything, her accent. So, yes, she called while I went to the restroom, but I don't even remember her apartment, other than I remember I had to go to the bathroom, and I surely used her bathroom. I know I used her bathroom and coming back, and I remember her calling Madame Lafarge using her phone. So, we go back to the apartment right away, and she comes along, and so she knows where it is then. So we're up there waiting outside the door. Madame Lafarge comes, and she's a tough, maybe in her early 60s, tough French woman. And down to business and no nonsense. What do you mean this doesn't work? Her accent and all, but she could speak English. And then she spoke some to this woman, and um, in French, and then back to me. She's give me that key. This'll work. It's this. She held it up to her key, and it was the same. And oh, oh, why it won't open it? Why won't it open it? Well, I've got mine, and I give you this, and I'll take this other, and I've got an extra in her home, her house. And so she opened it up, got in. Anastasia, that's this lady's name, came in with us, and but then she left, and before she left, she very kindly said, she says, well, why don't you rest or whatever, and then why don't at around 4 I come and get you, and I'll take you and show you around the village, places where I like to get food, and the bakery, and I'd already seen that, but where I get the nicest greens for salads and groceries, and you might want a bottle of wine and different things like that. Very, very nice. And I thought, wow, God provides. Oh, yes, He did. So it was going to turn out. But so she came around 4, and she showed me around the village, and also showed me the little church, because she knew I was Catholic, and saw my crucifix, or asked me and saw my crucifix, and I said yes, and and so then yes, I got some things while we were shopping, but not a lot, because she said the next day, she says, I'll borrow my partner's car, and I'll take you to another area where it's much more shopping stalls. It's in the real close, a larger area that had lots of fresh vegetables and things. She says fruits, and she says much more selection and much better prices. And it'll be fun for you to see the surrounding area a little bit. I thought, wow, isn't that nice too? So, but so anyway, we part, we go back. I head up to my apartment building. She's like, 1 or 2 apartment buildings apart, like I think 2 at least. And so that was that. Then she said the next morning, instead of going, she changed the plans a little bit when we were leaving, when I was heading back to the apartment, that in the morning, that I would, she wanted to show me special pathways going down to the Mediterranean, places that I would enjoy. She says, oh, it's just wonderful to meditate here. And places down on these pathways that are close to the water that you can really enjoy, seeing the Mediterranean Sea, and take your book along and do all this. So she says, I'll show you around some of the special pathways and some of the areas. And I said, well, do you want to go? I said, I want to go to Mass in the morning. And she says, no, probably not. She says that the priest doesn't like me that well here, but she says, you go, and she says, I'll just meet you after Mass. I'll meet you after Mass outside the church. And I felt like, she's being so kind. And I said, well, why don't I treat you to breakfast in this little village cafe there? And she liked that idea. And I said, then we could, go walking, and you can show me, because she was very insistent. She wanted to show me the pathways getting down to the sea. So next morning, I meet her outside the church, because she, Mass was going to start, and then she was going to wait. Well, she went in. When I went into the church, she had already arrived there, and went in. And she'd been back in the sacristy talking with the priest, this French priest. And I'd just gone in and waited. And there were other people coming in to sit. And I sat, there were wood pews, no padding. So I figured I could sit for a daytime mass. And I used to just lay down on the pew or slouch or things. So, but since I was new there, I didn't want to draw attention to myself. But the priest came out and he was like chasing her out and sort of shouting at her in French, and she just tore down the center aisle out of this little village. It was probably a 13th century church or something, very old. This little Gien is a very old village. Just, well, Gaul is way back, this it would have been in the area of Gaul. And in fact, I looked later at a map, and the caves of St. Baum weren't far, where Mary Magdalene had lived her hermit life. I mean, I was so close to so many things. I was just, wow, that I had read about and knew about, and from reading different saints and hermits and things. So I thought, well, that's strange. And Anastasia's face really looked stricken too when she was leaving, rushing out. And the priest, yelled something and went like this, one final time because he came out past the altar getting her out. And I thought, wow. And I thought, this isn't right. This isn't good. What's going on? And so I went to Mass, and then after, she was waiting outside for me to go to breakfast, go take her to breakfast before we did our little hike. And she, I have to tell you, it was a miracle I was able to get up the next morning. I really was blessed, but for a while. Then, so I said, what was that back there? Why did you decide? I said, I thought you weren't going to Mass, but I said, why did you leave? What was the problem? Oh, I don't get along with the priest. I don't get along with the priest. That's all she said. So I said, where do you want to have breakfast? And she had a little favorite place. Well, we ordered, and I'm not a drinker, but I'm not opposed. I've had wine when I was younger, and in California, we'd have wine now and then for dinner or something. But so Anastasia, though, started ordering wine, breakfast, and I thought, well, I sort of looked around. It's France, people drink. But then when she ordered, it was like her third glass. I thought, this is a little bit. She seemed to hold it very well, and I thought, well, she's used to wine. She's French, And she ordered a little food and didn't eat much. I think I took her baguette or something in a baggie with me because I don't waste things. I thought, oh, that's lunch or breakfast tomorrow morning. She hadn't eaten that. She drank her breakfast. But that was fun. She wasn't inebriated or anything that I could tell at all. We got up and started on, and she's showing me these pathways. But during breakfast, she was just talking away about her time in California. Growing up there as a what did I call? I called it something earlier. She wasn't adopted. She was, but she was taking care of this family, and so she didn't live with her parents. She wasn't an orphan though. Can't think of the name, what it's called. It'll come to me probably. But she started telling me sort of these really incredible things that she had. She had this stepfather that she didn't like, and he kept trying to control her. She was in high school, and she actually ran away. But she had he had done something, had forbade her to do something, and she told about they lived in a farm in Central California, and he had a farm, a barn, and that she had ripped the barn doors off. She had such strength, she said, that when she got angry, that she would have incredible strength, she said. She told me all these different things in breakfast. And about the story of her life and growing up and how she ended up being a foster child. That her mother sent her to live with this family in California. But she ran away from the family when she was in high school and ended up back in France. And then she told me about she had had one lover in another area of France, like in Lyon or something. Her mother, she was born in Lyon. Her mother was from Lyon, but lived in Canada now. But she came back to Gien, lived in Gien, and she had this partner now named Patrice. And he was a fisherman and had a boat and all. And so that's what he did. So when we were out walking on these beautiful paths winding down to the sea, and she would point out different little areas that would be lovely just to sit or to do something or to wander around and meditate and pray because she knew I was religious. And I didn't think anything of it. But then down toward the water more, we saw a man working on his boat, and he asked about Patrice. Well, I could tell he was speaking French, but I could tell, and I could make out a few words that he was asking a question. And I heard the word Patrice, and Anastasia had, also, Anastasia had invited me then to lunch at her apartment, to come for lunch, because she said it would be rude if I didn't agree, because since I had hosted her for breakfast. But she says, then that's it. Then you don't have to do anything more. I'll just show you this and then have lunch, and then you have your time alone for your vacation. Because I explained, that I wanted to spend time reading and quiet. I didn't want to have, I didn't say I was a hermit, but I didn't want to have the whole time spent occupied with someone. As nice as she seemed. So I did the drinking the wine at the breakfast, but my dad was an alcoholic, so I pick up on stuff. I don't, but I'm not French, I'm not Spanish. Maybe they do have a drink of wine. But I think she had 2 or 3. But I'm mostly a teetotaler, so that's that. And so, that would have had me probably not able to walk if I'd had 3 glasses of wine. So, she told me then that he was asking about Patrice, but she says, or I think maybe they spoke English maybe part of the time. She introduced me to him in English. So maybe they were, because he asked about Patrice, and she told him, because I know this from English, because I wouldn't have understood, that his boat hadn't been working. His boat hadn't been working right. So he hadn't been out fishing much lately. But she told me that he would be back at 4 that afternoon, that he'd gone someplace. He had a vehicle, she said. And so we went up from the Mediterranean then, and she started talking about one point on a curve. I remember exactly where we were standing in all this lush growth, olive trees everywhere. It was just so picturesque there. A dream vacation, dream trip for me, a dream trip. And she started talking about Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And these terrible things about her. She says, well, that she needs to stop beating the sisters and talking like that. And she had said other things, too, that started to alarm me. And so I decided that when we got back up to the village, which wasn't far, that I was going to get out of lunch. I was bound and determined I was going to get out of lunch with her. Because I thought and then listening to her childhood growing up and the foster child and different things and how strong she was and how upset she had gotten with her stepfather and ran away. And it wasn't my childhood. And so, I wasn't, I just started feeling uncomfortable. But what really did it was she was stood there and was talking to me then. She stopped a little ways after we talked and was showing something. And she turned to me and she said, "And you need to stop tattletaling on that priest." And I thought, I hadn't said anything about any priest, but I had I had already done it, but I had had that priest assignment. But I'd had to clear that up 2 years prior. And then as she spoke, she had told me about how she had terrible lung problems and had had pneumonia, and her lungs weren't very good. From her lung, I saw come out of one of her lungs this cube, like it looked like a block of charcoal, about this big, and sort of squarish, but not curved like charcoal, but that size of a charcoal brisket, I guess they call it, that little chunk. And it was, 3-dimensional, but it was, my inner sight saw it, but it was as clear as day, came from her lung, inside of her, through her body, through and into mine. And it went right into me. And it was black and it was sort of smoldering, but I didn't feel pain or anything. But it went into me, into my lung. And this was sort of up higher in my lung. And I thought, okay, keep your cool. Something is very, very bad here. And we got up to the top. She wanted to show me one more area. I said, oh, let's just go. And oh no, this won't take long. So we just walked around this one other little area that was nice. And there were some people, I thought, well, okay, But then as we were walking back toward the 2 apartment buildings that are separated by like maybe 2 apartments, buildings, or yeah, I think there were 2 between ours, but they're all close together. And maybe built in the 80s or 70s, 60s, something like that. Not all that old. And sort of up on a hill, and you could see the sea from one of the windows in Tomas's apartment. You could see the Mediterranean, and so comfortable, hard bed. Oh, good. So, and chairs were so firm. That a sofa was firm. So it was just delightful in his apartment. But I broke it to her then. As we got closer, I said, well, I'm tired. It was a rough day yesterday, long trip. And thank you for showing me that, but I'm going to renege on lunch. Thank you for inviting me. But she started insisting. And she says, in France, this would be very, very rude. She says, I have everything made special. She says, I spent a lot of time this morning working on it. I mean, not this morning, it was last night, she said. Last night, getting everything ready for you. Because in France, to invite a guest, you don't refuse this last minute. And she says, it won't, just a half hour and then you go home. Just a half hour, you go home, and then you enjoy your trip here, and I won't bother you or anything. If you have any questions, you can ask me, but have your quiet. And it was very, very nice acting again. Very, no things about Mother Teresa anymore. That was just it. She didn't say anything more, and nothing else freaky that like stop tattling on the priests. So, well, he needed it. But anyway, so I go to her apartment. I think, well, okay, what's the harm? So we get in there, and I think, did she pour a glass of wine for, I'm sure, for herself? I didn't have any, or maybe I had a glass then at lunch. And she had prepared things in advance. It's very nice. But then she started talking more and smoked some little funny cigarettes. But it was before even that. So she started talking more and more about her child. She showed me these X-rays. She says, I have steel rods in my arm, both arms, from up here all the way down in both arms. I thought, that doesn't sound good. I said, well, were you in an accident? She says, no. Well, something must have happened. Something that she had her arms broken badly or something. Lord knows. Um, she showed me the X-rays, the scans, and with these rods down it. She showed me her arms. She pulled up her sleeves and these scars all the way down both arms. And I did not doubt she had steel arms. And so I said, well, I want to leave, I need to leave now. It's a lovely lunch and stayed longer than I probably should have. And she would not let me leave. We got to her apartment at noon or a little before, and she would not let me leave. I mean, physically. I would try to stand up, and she would shove me back down. And it got worse and worse. And she says, you're not leaving here. And then I kept thinking, well, this Patrice guy is going to come here at 4, because she told me before when we were out wandering around looking at the pathways and things, how to get down to the ocean. And it was, you'd have to find your way. With me, probably it wouldn't have been so easy. I'm directionally challenged. But so I realized, just wait until 4. Wait until 4. You better just cool it. She had already told me about her mother. So she started talking and talking. And she would read my soul. She read my life. She knew things about my dad and my mother that from things that I knew from when they were little, even growing up, that stories they said. She knew they were deceased. She knew things about me. She could read my mind. Not even just what I was thinking then, which I tried then to blank my mind, and also to think holy, 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 praying in my mind. And I had my crucifix on. So, I just thought, Patrice will be here at 4. She started telling me about another guy, Patrice, before. And these violent things. They did. It's probably how she got her arms broken. But how she had slit his eyelids up here while he was sleeping because he had cheated on her, or she thought he had. So while he was sleeping, she took a razor blade and just slit his eyelids like here. And I guess left. Then she had this Patrice who was here, this other boyfriend. And it was his car that we were going to use to go to this other place. She says he's got this car. And that's what she was telling this man, that his boat was broken, that he's working on it, but that he was off in this other town. He had driven over there for the day. So, but when I was sitting there at the, having lunch, or well, it was after that when I realized I am in deep, what. And I noticed, all of a sudden I noticed just how creepy. She had creepy images on all things that were creepy. New age stuff around. And I didn't see, I had to go to the bathroom once. She allowed me to do that. Allowed me to go to the bathroom. And on the way I was looking and I saw nothing. No effects of any man living there. And I'm just like, okay, stay calm, stay collected, don't get riled, just keep her calm, because she started talking more about more violent things that she had done. And I noticed there was this big spear gun, fishing spear gun, over by the door, leaning up there. Big thing. And uh, and she had a big carving knife out on the kitchen cabinet, and uh, it was unreal. And she'd started telling me about her mother then, um, and how her mother was arguing with her at the time, but her mother was in Canada, and her mother wanted her, I think, to move to Lyon or to move over to Canada to live with her, to be with her. And she did not like her mother. This was her birth mother. And the phone rings, and it's her birth mother calling from Canada. And Anastasia gave me the phone, and she says, "You talk, and you say exactly what I tell you to say." And okay, so I'm talking with this woman's mother. She seems very sweet, very nice. She speaks English fluently, French accent. Lives in Toronto, I believe it was, or Montreal. And was there. And she told me all about the area, and um, how she had grown up in Lyon, France, and had lived there as an adult. That was where Anastasia was born, and she kept asking me questions about Anastasia, about, well, she's been so sick, I've been worried about her. She had pneumonia, and Anastasia would look at me and say, "You say nothing," and I'd have the phone, and I said, "Oh, or tell her I'm fine." She would, and "She's fine. No, she's fine." And I was supposed to like repeat some of what the mother was saying, and then Anastasia would tell me what I was to say. I mean, it was horrifying, but I just kept praying, and knew that this Patrice was gonna come at 4. Well, 4 o'clock came, 4:30 came, 5 o'clock came. Anastasia then was drinking more and more, and she was smoking these little funny cigarettes that I couldn't really tell if they were marijuana or not. I don't know about these things. It was something. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I think I would have noticed, but she wasn't really drunk. She just was evil. And her eyes, and she spoke multiple languages. She spoke like 5 or 6 different languages fluently. And she let me know she started spoken some of them. She had superhuman strength. She had already mentioned that about tearing down this barn door and scaring her stepfather so much. And who knows, maybe she hurt him, and who knows if she ran away or if she was in some detention center in California for juvenile delinquents. I don't know. I mean, it got to be 6 o'clock, no Patrice. I several times would try to get up, shove me back down hard. And I thought, well, I don't want to have my fusion or anything get messed up there in Gien, France. I can't even get out of the place. I I knew I was in trouble, big trouble. And finally, at 20 till 7, she had drank enough. She had to go to the bathroom, water and wine. And maybe she had a bottle out. Seems like she might have had some kind of a bottle out also, something else. And I thought, this is my only chance to get it. Was getting dusk out. This was in early April. It would be about April 7th or 8th. Uh, about April 8th that day was. Rod's birthday, Tomas's host family brother's birthday. And so I thought when she, is in that bathroom, I get quick. I had already looked. I had already been, there. Oh, she also started teaching me. She says, I need to teach you spiritual matters. And she had these 3 keys she was going to teach me. And she started talking, and she stood over me for that. She stood right there. I was sitting like this mouse that I was. And I was. I was as helpless as a mouse in a corner with the devil with a pitchfork ready to get me. She stood over, and she was big woman, not super heavy. I mean, bigger than me, heavier, but probably 5'9", 5'10". I was 5'7.5", maybe by then, already starting to shrink, and slight in bones. And I definitely I don't have arms of steel, and I have a bad back, and she would just stand there right in front of my chair at that table. That's where I sat all that time. My back was killing me. I have to say, I didn't have pain meds then. My back was killing me. And it's a wood chair, but still, um, oh, I mean, the horror of that room, the horror of it. And she never offered any more food, even as it got to be close to some, so no, it was for real. I was in trouble. This was no social call. So she started espousing these strange, like new age things. They just didn't make any sense at all. But they did make sense, except they were not good. They were new age. They were bizarre. They had evil in them. And then she would slip in something more about my life, my childhood, or about my dad or my mother or my sisters. So she got to the bathroom, closed the door. I get up quietly as I could. I get to the door to gently deadbolt it. And outside too, as we came in, I noticed the name tag. The tag there by the doorbell, said Patrice somebody. So that was not made up. A Patrice lived there or had lived there at some time. And I did not make a noise. She could see through. She says, I see you. I'm watching you. You are trying to leave and you cannot. And with that, I open that door and I go down those stairs as fast as someone with a terrible backhand. They were those concrete stairs. And I can't run. But in the parking lot, I went as fast as I could. I do like this loping thing. And she comes tearing after me. And she grabs me by the arm. I only got maybe 20 feet outside the apartment. And she grabs me right like this. And isn't letting go. And superhuman strength. She was so strong. And I just said, please, please. I tried to be calm. I thought, don't sound begging or pathetic, but just very sincere and pleading in a gentle way. Please, please let me go. Please let me go. Let me be. And she wasn't letting go of her grip. And I knew I had my crucifix on, and I said an inner prayer for help. Obviously, dear God, help me, help save me. And as soon as I'd gotten outside, I started yelling, help, help. And but there was a man over on, far off, and he looked over, but he probably didn't know English or something and didn't know what was going on. But when I said my prayer, she immediately let go of my arm, stepped back 3 feet, and started doing like this in an arc, just a halfway arc around me, She could, it was like, and a shield was around me, a shield, an arc, and she could not reach in through it. She was just frantic, trying to get me, and she couldn't. She was blocked, and um, she gave up then, and she says, and she put her arms down then, but she couldn't step forward to me. And she said, "Well, all right," but she says, "I'm going to be in you tonight, and I'm going to be in you through your dad. I'm in your dad, and I will be there tomorrow morning, and you will not escape me." And I just took off. I mean, I loped and as fast as I could, uh, without running, and I couldn't run. And I didn't even. Oh yes, did I go to the apartment? No, I had my little notebook with Tomas's number and my little cell phone, and I'm pretty sure I had my card on me too. My little wallet with my stuff in it. I had a little thing that I would wear that um, around the waist, and I had money in it. I had my cell card, my phone in my pocket, and then my cell card in that little container. Um, and my notebook was in my pocket, my little tiny notebook with Tomas's phone number and everything, and my information. And I just went directly to that bakery. That in the day before, someone could speak a little broken English, and I went in there. By then it was like 5 till 7, and I went in there and I said, "Help, help." I said, "I've been held against my will. I've been held against my will. And I need help." I says, "Is there police here? Are there police here?" And she said, "No, no. I'd have to go to Marseille. And no, we don't have police. We don't have a police department here." And I got out, that I needed help, that I was being held against my will. But the gal who had been there earlier the day before did not know, they didn't know English. A man walks in and he says, "Well, I can speak some English." He walked in right as they were closing. We had like 5 minutes left. And he says, "What's the problem?" And I said, well, and the people were talking to him in French and pointing at me, because they knew something was wrong because I was freaking out. And he says, "Well, I'll get you down to this." They didn't have a phone. They didn't have a phone that I could call long distance to Tomas. So he says, "I'll take you to this phone booth down here, and then you can use your long distance card." This man did, who could speak some English. So he takes me down to that and shows me how to use it, to use the card. Well, my card wouldn't work, but he showed me how to put it in and get everything lined up, and how to put the number in and all. And so he leaves. He walks off. He leaves. I want to get this straight. It was just such a nightmare. No. He stayed. He stayed, and my phone card didn't work. It would not work in that phone booth. Don't know why. I think we figured it out later. Madame Lafarge or somebody did it. But he says, "Oh, I'll take you down to this magazine shop, because that proprietor often stays open maybe 10 or 15 minutes after 7. Everything shuts down at 7 in this little village with no police." So we go there. This man takes me there, and then he leaves. But the proprietor of the magazine shop, the newsprint shop, this man told him in French what was needed, and he let me use the phone, or he dialed it. I gave him Tomas's number. Gisela answered. I said, "Gisela, I'm in help. I need help. I'm in trouble. I'm in big trouble here." I said, "I've been held against my will, and I don't know what to do." But I said, "It's not safe for me to go back to the apartment because this lady knows where it is." And I didn't want Tomas and Gisela to know that their friend that Tomas's friend from high school in the United States has freaky mystical experiences or anything, but I, I said, I did say to her, I said, she's read my mind. She held me against my will. I didn't want to say about how she put this cube of smoldering, like charcoal chunk into my lungs, and that I was afraid she was gonna kill me with that spear, that fish spear gun, and I knew that Patrice is probably dead in the Mediterranean, because this other man had asked her, I haven't seen him around in a while, where's his boat and all this. Probably his boat's down in the bottom too. Patrice never showed up, but so anyway, but then Jesus says, well, Tomas isn't home. Tomas isn't home yet. But she says, we'll call you right back. And so I'm there trying to explain to this man. So Jesus says, let me talk to him. She could speak French. She's German, but she knows these languages. So she told him, please stay open enough longer, so because my husband will come and then he can talk to her. And Jesus explained to this shop owner that I was in trouble. So Tomas gets there at Jesus in Germany, calls, talks to me, and he's trying to calm me down and say, well, are you sure? This is. I said, look, you've got to trust me. I said, I know about this kind of stuff. I said, I'm lucky to be out of there with my life. I didn't say the weird thing about I was protected by a shield or, but I did tell her, I said, she wasn't going to let me go. She kept shoving me down and grabbed me and wasn't going to let me go outside the apartment building. And so he realized then that, he knows me, the logical and was intelligent person and a good student in high school and college and all. So he says, I'm so sorry. He says, this trip isn't going to work for you. He says, I've got to get you out of there. So he says, let me make some phone calls. But he says, I want you to go up the street, just 3 doors down. There's a hotel there where you stay. He says, I'm going to make arrangements for you to spend there tonight. Madame Lafarge will come get you, take you to the apartment, pack up your things, back to the hotel with Madame Lafarge, and I'll get you out. You're going to leave by train the next morning out of there. By then, it was probably 7:15. The shop owner was antsy, wanting to, close up, get home to his family, kept seeing Famia. So I thought, good, I'll just walk down there. The man left. When I was using the phone, the man that had gotten me that far left because everything's okay now. You'll be okay. He left. So I walked up the street to this hotel, of course, fearful that Anastasia had come looking for me down in this village even. But, so I get to the hotel. There's a sign on it. Well, I could read French better than hearing the accent speak it. It was closed. A season opens next week. So there I was. So I go out into the street from the portico of that hotel in downtown, not downtown even, it's just a little quaint medieval dark, little village, so quaint, so just dream. And right down from that little Joan of Arc church that was just so gorgeous and quaint and 13th century or something. It's just very, very old. And so I just stood in the middle of the street and I started calling out, can anyone speak English? Can anyone speak English? I saw a woman across the way come out and to get into a car. And I directed my call to her. And she went like this, didn't, and parle anglais. And then, but there was this dark little alleyway that between these old buildings. And out comes this young man. I could hear him when I was asking the woman, I need help. And he says, well, I can speak a little English. I can help you. I think I can help you. And he steps out of these shadows and comes across. It's getting darker by the minute. And he says, I don't know English well, but I know a woman, and it's all broken English. It's not like I'm saying. I know a woman, she hangs out with a lot of us students, and she's from the United States, but she lives here. And he says, I'll take you to her. And she lives down underneath in a bottom apartment underneath one of these buildings. By then it is dark. And so I'm following him along, and he takes me back down more toward the magazine shop area. But across from it and down are these stairs that go straight down, little narrow stairs, curved down. And he says, just don't worry, don't, because I think people could see the shock and the panic I had been through. I've never spoken, I mean, I remember the fear, and I'd never spoken like that, the urgency and the panic. And so because even him, I think I grabbed his arms and I said, I've been held against my will. I've been held against my will. I couldn't escape. I finally escaped. And she might be coming. And so Tomas was going to call Madame Lafarge to come get me at the hotel. But I needed help. I couldn't just stand out there in the open, unprotected. So, and I couldn't think straight even, with that. It was just like, get cover, get help, get somebody with you who can protect you, or at least try to. Or that this Anastasia wouldn't try to do something if another person were with me, maybe, hopefully. So, because I didn't trust her thing about how she was going to come for me in the morning. I thought she'll try to come tonight, or figure I'll go try to get help, or I don't know, because she could read minds, but not always. See, that's all these little clues I'm leaving. But so we get down in there, and I just thought, Lord, I just have to trust. I have no idea what I'm walking into. And he knocked on the door, and this opened up, and there were all these students in there. It was crowded, cigarette smoke, probably other smoke, and wine, and talking, or just, and this woman emerges. This kid goes in, and he was maybe 19 or 20, and he walks through some of the crowd and the kids, and out comes this woman. And she's, I'm so and so, and I hear you've had some trouble, and I'm from the United States, but I live here, and how can I help you? And so she called Tomas then, and Tomas by then was frantic because Madame Lafarge had been driving all around looking for me by then, or had been back and forth in front of the hotel, but I was so close, so. This lady helped, and I got with Madame Lafarge then, and because Tomas then could call her on her cell phone, and think if we didn't have cell phones then, this was 2008. I'd only had mine since 2004. So got in her car, and she took me to the apartment, and she says, well, you just stay here for the night. Tomas had told me the plan. And I said, no. I said, I said, I can't be here. I said, you don't understand. I kept saying, you don't understand this woman. I couldn't express enough that she was a demoniac, a true demoniac, superhuman strength, multiple languages, knew things about my dad and my mother that cousins wouldn't have known, knew things about me. Yes. And her new age stuff, these pictures and creepy, and Patrice never came, and I didn't see evidence of any male clothing, nothing of a man in that apartment. Who knows how long? Either that or this Patrice left and said, keep the apartment, I'm out of here. But I just wonder. I've always had an uneasy feeling that Patrice wasn't with us anymore. But and it was she explained that she had an earlier boyfriend, Patrice, but and I was in a Patrice's apartment, whichever Patrice, but the other Patrice was in Lyon, France. So, anyway, so I told Madame Lafarge, I said, no, I can't. I said, I'm just too shaken. I can't stay here alone tonight. She knows, she says, well, she can't get you. I said, she knows where this apartment is. Remember, she was here. She was here when you opened the door and she came in and and she said she was coming to get me in the morning, that she would be here to get me and I would not escape again. And I said, I don't have any reason to doubt her. So Madame Lafarge, okay, pack up a few, get your things, and I'll take you to my house. We'll call Tomas, and see, and I could tell Madame Lafarge had probably had her night wine too, and she was a little extra crusty then. So she took me to her house. Wasn't far at all, and a regular home up, up in the hills, and just beautiful area, so lovely. And talked to Tomas, and Tomas said no, no. He had already gotten me a room in a hotel that was open, with strict instructions that no one was to. They were not to say I was there if anyone inquired. Tomas believed and knew, he knows me. He knew enough that this was horrific for me, and that I wasn't just making it up or anything like that, or taking something out of context, that I would ruin this wonderful trip. So he said to Madame Lafarge, she says, okay, and so she got me to this other hotel, and I was to stay in the room until 10 o'clock the next morning, and they would come and until Madame Lafarge came there, and Tomas had already told the head of the hotel that and they knew Madame Lafarge. It was a small enough area that no one was to know that I was there. And then she was going to drive me directly to the train station in Marseille. And he was arranging that night via internet to get me into Annecy and into a hotel. He told me on the phone what hotel, and I would stay there 2 nights. And then he wanted me to stay at he had arranged for me in Stuttgart. He had a friend, a very well-off engineer, who lived in that area, and they were going to hostess me. This man and his wife, Tomas's friends. Tomas's dad was a well-known doctor in Germany. Then he had a or was his brother a doctor? His dad might have been a politician. Anyway, they were well-heeled people and had connections, and he had lovely people. And they had this friend. He had a friend there in Stuttgart area, and they were going to show me different areas of that area of Bavaria. I was thinking, maybe I could get somewhere, see where Anne Catherine Emmerich was or something, the victim soul and stigmatic visionary. So but by then I said, I better just do that and not do the Germany. I was getting something in my lung. I was getting sick. My lung, something was bad with my lung from what she'd put in there. And so evil, it was bad. So next morning, and Tomas said, give her $50 of, French money, pay her for a tip, as a tip to get you to the train station, which I did. The stinker, Madame Lafarge, later told Thomas that I never paid her, and I paid the $50. And I felt bad because Thomas then paid her also. The stinker, Madame Lafarge. But she got me to the train station. I practiced my French a little bit on her, with her in the car getting there. She got me on the train, and I was sort of in shock. I was relieved, and we had packed up my everything from my in the apartment. So I had already started reading this book, and I'd gotten about this far in this book. I'd gotten about that far. This wasn't in it, but I had a little piece. I had a. Is that it, or was this it? I had a marker in it. So, but I get to Annecy, and I'm hanging in there with my lungs. I'm getting sick, but not bad yet. And but it's raining in Annecy, but I walked around, took the little walking trip of where St. Francis de Sales spent his growing up and his adulthood life, and he was actually out in a like a castle or something. He had noble parents, but where he lived as a priest and then as a bishop, and his house where the place where he stayed, the rectory where he was as a bishop, his church, then I got over to where the monastery, the Visitation was, and his tomb, and Saint Jane de Chantal's tomb. They're on either side of this very large chapel church and then altars in front and there on each side, in the lower area. And that was just very meaningful because I really liked St. Francis de Sales. And I stayed in the hotel. And when I was there, the first, would have been that evening, or we were having supper, and that different people just sort of gathered and we were eating. And I was still just so shaken that I said, I'd had quite a fright. Because people were talking about their travels. They were all people that spoke English that were just traveling through into Annecy. And so some young person who was a student told me about what happened, his experiences traveling, and said, yeah, it's going to get really bad when you're traveling. I didn't say again what happened to me. But anyway, but it was amazing to hear other people talk about how they had, that they had to be very careful traveling. I thought, yep. So I did that for a couple of days, getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Maybe that was when Thomas checked with me and I said, no, I can't go on to Germany. I've got to get back and I've got to get flown home. I think that was what happened. And I did send an email I had my little laptop still in, my little 13-inch with me, because I was going to do some writing while I was there too in the Mediterranean. And so I got sicker and sicker, got back to Vienna, and I thought, and Father Subishan wasn't back yet. And he wasn't expecting me either, because he'd been gone. He was just going to go on for 3 days. I was going to be gone for 3 weeks. So I knew that there was a hotel, the one that Tomas had stayed in when he came to help set up my trip for me and show me, how to manage things to get there and everything. So, and dinner and catch up, it was so nice. And so I just stayed in that hotel. I was exhausted. I was sick. I found a pharmacy the next day. Pharmacy, a drugstore, they call them. And, well, they are pharmaceuticals also, but somebody they could speak a little more English there, and, said I needed something, strongest thing they had for chest. So I got a bottle of that, and Then I thought, and Subishan was going to get back that night, I think, or the next morning from his diocese work. And uh, and he told me, Subishan told me he'd had a funny feeling that something wasn't going to go well for me. But I did have that one day remaining. I got my airline ticked up. I went back. It's actually on my son's birthday on the 13th of April. That was going to be a Sunday. And I think I got back on Friday or Thursday night, spent the night. Subishan got back Friday during the day. I gave Subishan my laptop and that we went around. When he got back, we spent that final day going into Vienna, into the busy area more, to find a computer place that could adapt my computer and strip out everything on it and put it on some kind of a hard drive or however they do that. And so that he'd just have my blank computer for me. He was thrilled with that computer. And I wanted to do something wonderful for him, for all his hospitality and everything. And also just to let him know I care. But so when he still wasn't back, that was when I went back down to Vienna before I got super sick. I wanted to see Father Schlob, Father Martin Schnob. I have his name written down in my notebooks. And he has since been in the United States. Schlag, Father Martin Schlag, Opus Dei. I tracked him down when I was on the island and wanted to get a hold of him and thank him again. He was at St. John's in Minnesota as a visiting professor or something. So maybe he's back in Austria now. But I went into St. Peter's. I needed to see him. I was scared to death that Anastasia had cursed me because I had no idea how she was going to react when she found me gone. Nowhere to be found, that she was going to find me. Because the hotel people were told if anyone even inquires if I'm there to say nothing at all, say no. But except Madame Lafarge. So I wanted to see this priest and talk to him because I knew he was a powerful priest spiritually. I could tell that the half hour, 40 minutes that we spent on the train talking. And I had no idea because he told me that they take turns with days of confession. They had lots of priests in Opus Dei thriving because it's orthodox. It's got something going. It's solid. It stands for something. I wish Subishan had been Opus Dei. He would have been. Well, then I did. It's not the end of the story yet. So I went in there not even knowing if he was going to be in confession that day. I see him off in the distance, and I see him walk into the confessional. And I thought, thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord. That was his day of the week. So I didn't know, but so I wait in line. I get in. There's a screen, but he could probably see my shape. Or I said, but he's the one that spoke first. He says, "So we meet again, my friend. We meet again." Well, he told me he saw me come in. He recognized me walk in. It's a huge church, St. Peter's. And I'd been to a mass there too. On one of my when Subishan was doing other things, I would go in on my own then and just go to churches, and I liked that one. So I had a mass there, and there was a woman there who seemed to really like me. She couldn't speak English, but she was so nice and friendly and gesturing and, nice. But So I told him, I said, I said, I think I nearly lost my life. I was held against my will, and and it's just horrific. And the woman was a demoniac. She could read my mind. She could speak multiple languages. She had superhuman strength. She knew things about my deceased parents when they were young, and when I was grown up. I was just like a floodgate, because there was nobody else that I knew to get this out, and I tend to have to get things out, as you've recognized, and then I can move on. But he says, no. He says, no, you are not cursed. I says, am I cursed? Am I cursed? Give me a blessing or anything, exercise me, whatever. I don't want to be cursed. I was frantic because that is the first person who could help me, that had any kind of um, credibility of spiritual matters and the religious life and of God, and that I could trust, really, totally. That he was older, younger than me by far, but maybe he was in his mid-30s then, and he was actually the head of their group there in Venice. He's a very brilliant person, very highly educated when I checked him out online then. Um, so yeah, he was young and he was the head, I don't know what they call it, the prelate, I think they call him. But he convinced me that I was okay. And he says, I know you're going to be okay. He said, when I got off the train in Salzburg and you were going on with your trip, he said, I had something within me tell me that your life was going to be endangered. So he had gone to Salzburg to a convent there to minister to the sisters, hear their confessions, and celebrate Mass for them. I wondered later if it was the convent of Maria von Trapp. Who knows? That would have been wonderful, huh? But that was why he was going to Salzburg. And he says, I offered that first night's Mass for your protection, for your protection. And he says he said he said something about how he knew I was close to God or something, and that God had protected me, and that I wouldn't have been, she wouldn't have been able to have laid a curse on me. That I already was protected by God, and that the Mass that he offered for me, and also added protection. But I was just dumbfounded that he had this premonition and what he did for me. And I said, you saved my life by offering that Mass for me, for my protection. You saved my life. Because if I hadn't escaped out, if she hadn't gone, if I hadn't known that I already knew as soon as she went to the bathroom that I had my plan, um, some people probably would have been too scared to do it or something, to try to leave. And I was scared to leave because I can't run. And I was no match for her whatsoever. Oh, she could see through walls. She saw me because I did not make a sound. And it was like a couple of rooms away the bathroom was. So, yeah. That was my worst demoniac. The neighbor lady was bad, but this one was the very worst I have ever encountered. And but I was getting sicker and sicker. Father Stabishan got back then late that evening, I think. I got back, left and went back to the rectory. And well, I had to wait until he got back, see. And he had gotten back, so I got in. And because he had locked up when he left. That's why I stayed in the hotel. So he said he'd had a premonition that something was going to happen. And he'd prayed for me. I mean, himself, he was just such a wonderful young priest. And and good person, he'd just fallen away because of the laxity. He'd said, well, everybody else is. He says, if I don't act like them, they won't like me. They'll get down on me. They'll feel like I'm trying to be better than them. So he wasn't mature enough as a priest to be willing to. He felt it would be an offense. He was in a foreign country. He was a guest there, you know. He didn't want to offend the other priests. And so I sort of saw that, but of course I'm a zealous type. I really am. I'm an idealist. I want things to be done well and right, and I want us to, like I'm doing now. I'm not taking chances with being ill. The lady who's been such a hassle to me for 17 years. I'm sure she thinks I'm a hassle to her. She views things differently than I do, very differently. But she's taken those things out now. There's still some doxing in there that she's missed, but I didn't go through, but I did a general review of it. But so, and of course, writing a lot about how she never said those things. So now I really look like all the things that she says I am. And is blaming me, saying that I am upsetting people and I'm misinforming, and that of course people you could, but you cannot be a Catholic hermit unless you're canonically approved, because that's special. That has to be, and you're only consecrated by a bishop. That's why I put a verse up from Hebrews. No, God consecrates, and God consecrated me. So, you know, that's something that no one can take away from you when God consecrates you. I could probably ask any bishop if he doubted that God had consecrated me. They know God consecrates. Bishops know that. But the ladies just, I'm going to do another video though, dealing with the devil, how the devil uses situations in other ways, because I've had experience. I've had lots of experience with demonic situations. But this was the worst. This was worse than the neighbor lady. The neighbor lady was ongoing. And yes, you know, she tried to run over my feet with a lawnmower. She had me cornered. She told her son to shoot his gun over at me. They were out on their deck. They were going to burn my house down. Things like that, you know. So, and I'm just laying there like, you know, what are you going to do? Praying. That was before I got my protective order. I got my protective order then. But yeah, so I, Father Submission had felt that, was worried about that. And so I told him, you know, I was getting so ill, this cough coming up, and he, and just feeling sickness from the lungs out. And I didn't want to tell him anything of it. I'm telling my spiritual life here because I feel protected. You don't know who I am. You see me, but because I don't, you know, it's anonymous. But it's sort of good to share these things. So some of you have had horrible experiences, but those of you who haven't, so you know, the devil is real. The devil is real, and it gets into people and it takes them over. She was possessed. She was possessed. And they function among us. They function among us. She's probably a psychopath, because she, in detail, talked about how she got her revenge by slitting her first boyfriend eyelids with razor blade. Oh, Lord. So, I got my ticket, and Submission drove me to the airport early, Sunday morning the 13th that year, 2008. And I said something to him on the way. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to let him know, you know, don't lose your faith like this. You can say all the scriptures at Mass, Don't alter the Mass. Those people weren't in any rush that were in there. And none of the other priests would have known that he was doing all the. And there's the Opus Dei priests doing it right and wearing their collar. Submission wasn't wearing his collar out. What if somebody. It's a witness. In a priest case, it's a witness. Same with religious orders. It's a witness. With hermits, no. You're not to be. You're to be hidden. A hidden witness. A hidden. Not drawing attention to yourself. Other than if Christ himself is in us and reaching someone supernaturally. That's the greater witness for a hermit. But the other ones have active apostolates out with people. That's why they wear things that make them be a symbol of that. If people recognize, Catholics might recognize a Franciscan habit and know that charism, they would recognize a Vincentian or a Benedictine and know that charism. Or Mother Teresa's, but she wore a habit of the people of the poor. But you recognize a sister of charity and at least can donate money or something when you see them. But but I said something to him that then later I thought, oh, I regretted. But I wanted to stir in him something. And it was sort of one of these double entendre little statements. It was something to the effect that, well, you have a good setup here. I said that. I said, you have a good, something like that. You have a good setup here, Father Submission. And he looked at me in the car, I remember this, and he says, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I said, well, just that you're going to get your further education taken care of, and that's good. And I said, you've got a parish, you've got a lovely rectory, you have time to do, pretty much what you'd like to do, and taken care of. And I said, I'm happy for you. And I was happy for him. It's a dream position. Compared to the priests in the United States that you think are pretty cushy. Of course, knowing Father Vincent, he's got it rough, but he's right in there. But it was maybe 5 years later. Submission, I think, could tell or something. When he saw me and how I am, very into the faith, and more so than I think he realized I would be. I'm very, I guess you would say, devout, sincere, but I don't show it. You'd have to be around me for a while, but I take it seriously. I guess that's it. I take it seriously. I take my hermit life seriously. And I'm not canonically approved, but I've lived it as if I were, followed that, and I think people should be canonically. It's the norm now. You go around asking, no, it's canonical approval. It's a no-brainer. The private profession, there's this little weak statement, weak wording that you can loophole in on it to justify. But the law is the law. The catechism says, and why not be? Now, one of the viewers said that it's very hard in some places. In Edmonton, Canada, that bishop is not allowing anyone to be canonically approved. So, but still live it. You can still live it even though you're not canonically approved. Then you've tried, and you can live it. Live the law, live the Catechism 920 and 921 also. So I got back. I had a beautiful little tester of a liqueur from, was it Magdeburg? One of the Austrian um, monasteries that I'd been to. A little vial of liqueur from there. Herbal, it was an herbal liqueur. I had some holy water from a shrine, and that's really all I'd got. I mean, I would have probably gotten some France, some medallions or something, or who knows what all. Things for my kids. I would have got some non-religious things for friends that aren't Catholic, but for Catholic friends I would have gotten. But I didn't have the time then because I was, but I'd already gotten the holy water, and this when we were at this one monastery made these little herbal liqueurs, little and beautiful little glass gorgeous jars or bottles, little tiny things, but they weren't tiny enough, and the airport people made me toss them out. And then my holy water made it all the way through though until Chicago, and by then I was horribly sick. It was late that Sunday night. Maybe it was like, well, not super late, but the time change and all, it would have been probably midnight in Austria. So maybe it was 5 or 6. And those people weren't going to let me have that. They were going to throw out that holy water. And I said, no, I said, that would be terrible to throw out holy water like that. And and they said, well, you can't travel. I said, well, I was so exhausted. I said, I'm staying here then with my luggage and my holy water. I'll just stay here in the airport because I said, I want that. I said, that's the only thing I have now from my trip. Well, I have pamphlets and things and some postcards from St. Francis de Sales place. And these women came over and they said, they said, we're going to box this up and we'll put it on the plane as a shipped package. They were so nice to me, and they saw when I got home. I looked dead. I looked so dead. And my friend picked me up at the airport in the Midwest, in the smaller airport, and took me directly to one of these urgent cares. But they weren't going to give me an antibiotic. And it was, and I didn't have health insurance either. It's so expensive. And I'm still very frugal. But I thought it's only till the next morning, 8 o'clock, I can call my doctor. And he knew me well enough. As it turned out, I called at 8 o'clock did I call him at home? No, I called him at the office. I think the nurse put him on the phone. My voice sounded so bad. And he says, I'm calling in a prescription, because he lived his office was like, I would have had to drive 24 miles to get there, and I couldn't. I was so sick. So he called in. He says, I can tell by your voice, you have pneumonia. Says, I'm doing this prescription. You take all those pills, and then you call if it's not better. So, so that was that, and I got the meds, took those. It took me a good 8 weeks to get over that. It took another round of antibiotic, and ever since I've been very prone to anything like that. So every year, usually I get a really bad lung thing. But last year I didn't. So anyway, that's not the end of the story. I get home, I get well enough, I unpack stuff. I'm looking around for this book, except it had the plain black paper jacket. I didn't have it. Where did I leave it? I contacted that hotel over there. They didn't have it. I emailed, or maybe Tomas called to see how I was feeling because he knew I was sick. I sounded horrible. He felt so bad about it all. And I was just so upset too because of all the waste of. But it was so good to see him though. I mean, it wasn't wasted, but I always think about, if they feel bad for people's finances because I went through such dire times with my children. Often wouldn't get child support. He'd do 1 month and maybe not do a month or do part of a check, knowing, that the California system was backlogged. And they are. Still never did get in to get the claims. But it mounted up to about at that time in the 1980s and through till 2002 was over $15,000 that he jilted on me that I made. And then, of course, it took a lot more for the children. I wasn't going to let them not have some nice experiences. My parents helped, and I just used up my money. That was it. Decided that I would do that. And so, but we were very frugal as the once the girls got started, then we had to be really frugal. Even the last year we did. I was always careful. I always had to be careful just because I wanted to have the money for their opportunities, for a camp or for a trip or things like that, because I couldn't take them places. So anyway, couldn't find this book anywhere. And Tomas called around, checked around. He says, well, when I go there, I'll check to see. But he says, I'll call the person who's there now renting and see. This was a while later then that he called back. And he emailed me and said, no, nothing's there. He asked Madame Lafarge also to go look for the book. No, not there. But I'm not sure of the time frame of all of that checking about for this book. And I said, don't worry about it. It's okay. I was just curious about sort of where, what, because I thought we'd had everything and I had barely anything. And I just was surprised. I was convinced somehow in my mind that I'd had it in the hotel with me, but, so, I 2 years later, I said, don't worry, but he kept calling and checking, with other people. But 2 years later, here comes this package from Germany. And it's the book. It's the book in its black jacket. And I thought, this is weird. And I opened it up in my little house, and in it, in this book, right where I had left off starting to read, it was fairly soon. It was really fairly soon in here. It wasn't, I don't think it was even where that card was. There was this note in there, a white paper note, handwritten. Guess who? Guess who somehow got into that apartment after I had left, and Madame Lafarge wouldn't have let her in. How would she know? Because Tomas and Gisela, they're both educators. They had bookcases in their books on the coffee table. My book, with a black plain paper jacket, unless you opened it up, you wouldn't see that it was English. And inside it, right where I had left off reading, was this little white piece of paper. I've got it in my filing cabinet. I kept it as proof to me that this all really happened, including the freaky note. it was after the fact, after I had gone, she had written this out from Anastasia, angry and upset that I had left, that she had come for me, it said, and had more things that she was going to teach me. And how dare I leave, or, I shouldn't have left. And then at the bottom, or toward the bottom of this note, something about how I didn't mean to scare you, but I still had things to teach you of the 3 keys, or I don't know what else. And her handwriting was sort of, I would love a handwriting analysis to look at it. But how she got that note in there, because they wouldn't have let anyone in. And as how the book got back to Germany was, it was somebody who had gone there to rent, one of his friends, a teacher friend, brought the book back. Tomas had asked around, and so this teacher friend knew that he was looking for a book. Somehow she got it and left it with a friend in another part of Germany. No, left it at her mother's when she was going back to Germany from south of France, this friend of Tomas's, and forgot it at her mother's. So finally, after 2 years, the person remembered that my book was there at her mother's, and then got it when she visited her mother, gave it to Tomas, and he mailed it to me. Didn't know, no one knew that note was in it. I emailed Tomas and said, so how could that note get in there? Because the apartment would have been locked. She and Anastasia would have had to go through all kinds of books and to stick it in. And what was weird was it was stuck in, I think I'd left it page 43 in my reading at the time. But I'm looking at this card. I don't remember this card as being mine. I'll have to read what it is. But the paper was, maybe this is something that, no, this is an English card. Francis de Sales. Why was it about page 40 something? 41 probably. The 17th chapter, the ability to love God above all things is not natural to us. This might be a good book to go through. I never did finish it. I got busy reading other things. But that was Anastasia, and my trip was done for. My body, if nothing else. Even if anyone could have convinced me that I wasn't cursed right then and there. But Father Martin Schlag, God bless you wherever you are now. He's either back in Vienna or in the United States. I'm going to Google him and see where is he. And I did send messages to their department of I think it was St. Thomas University in Minnesota, saying, if anyone locates him, I would like to be in touch with him. Tell him I'm the woman that he celebrated a mass, that he knew that my life was going to be endangered in France. He was in Vienna. The woman on the train, that's what I wrote. I was the woman on the train that he helped. But so then, several years, maybe 3 or 4 years after that, I find Subishan online. I lost track. He had gone back to India. You can see, I did find out he'd gotten his doctorate or something, advanced degree, and he let me know that. And where he was in this famous, the same place that Babu Antony is, or was, back in India. in this very famous, miraculous retreat center where people come from all over because of the healings and the miracles. So, and he, when we emailed, he was plugged in. I think just maybe getting back home, being back in India. And then I realized I think he really did believe that he would offend people if he had the full mass or if he wore his collar when the other diocese priests were not. And maybe he would have. Maybe he would have made them feel like I'm better than you. But there were Vienna Opus Dei priests in wearing their clerical garments. But it was, I don't know. It just, I felt bad then. I'm glad I gave him the laptop because he was such a great host at his time, and I could tell he was bored. And it's just wait outside some of these places. But he took me every place he could have thought of. He was the best host, uh, all out, all out for me, and so grateful. And his superior gave me a scarf, a silk scarf or something from India, and um, so. But God bless Father Subishan because he did. I don't think you could fake that because even if he could have been reading or doing some things in the rectory, I think it can happen to us. Well, it has to me. It did when I got busy doing parish things instead of my hermit life. And then like a year and a half ago when I was just had surgeries and was so ill and I just said, Jesus, I'm just going to float and fluff. I'm going to fluff until you come get me, take me with you. And if it's for 5 years, if it's even 10 years, and I distracted myself with films. They weren't bad films, but it wasn't the spiritual life per se directly. I wasn't plugged in with all three prongs, and I knew it. I was being a little bit in your face to Jesus, thinking maybe, well, this will get him to come get me. He'll think, oh no, I was like a child. If I hold my breath long enough, then I'll be let out of timeout. So, but no, I got back. So that's what Subishan was doing. He was just, I hadn't at that time. Well, yes, I had already had mine. So beware. We can, you can, I regret that I said that to him. Well, I was hoping that it would jar him enough. I didn't want to directly say, you could be, want to read the Divine Office with me? No, you could have. But priests are supposed to morning and night, but I can see how it would be if you're in an area and no one else is doing it. The other priests aren't, except for the Opus Dei ones. And he wasn't Opus Dei. He wasn't a religious order priest. Or maybe the Holy Spirit, and he grew some in his priesthood. Then he grew, and maybe being back in India, his home place, where he had pride in the priesthood there, more pride. He did sort of think it was like, oh my, yeah, no, they don't do any of this stuff, and he just sort of thrown in the towel. I guess you could get very discouraged. Anyway, that's my story, real life story, and probably not as icky to you guys, but it sure was to me how the whole thing unfolded, including that book coming back and that note that was in it, from Anastasia, creepy Anastasia, demoniac. And they can sound all sweet and cunning and deceitful and even very, Oh, I had more to teach you. I was going to teach you more, remember? And she wrote something, so it was, she got that in there fairly soon. She says, I hope you're coming back. That's just temporary because I still have things for you and to tell you. And so, but I couldn't have anyway. It's a good thing I got out when I did. Because even I was probably a couple of days late. I could have been earlier getting some antibiotics in the United States because, um, so the devil's real. And I think I'm going to do another video at some point about something that's even dawned on me today in a big way. And I had what's called a signal grace happen. I haven't had one in this house. And I had one. It's when you have a thought or something comes to mind that God wants you to really, really pay attention to. And if you're tired or tending not to, like I'm very tired, tending not, might not remember it, he'll do something in the temporal realm to be like an exclamation point to it, like pay attention to this. And with me, it tends to be a wall will pop. It's a deep pop in the wall, and it always comes out from an angle of my head. Most often has been my right side of my head, but on occasion it's been the crown part up like that straight above. But this time it was out of here, and it was up over I've got three big windows, right up over there toward the corner, and it came right out of that, just like a boom, like exclamation point. That's something you need to pay attention to. So I'm going to share what I'm to pay attention to. It has to do with the devil and how the devil operates. Because I was having a very rough day again today, and it totally helped me understand. I'd been having temptations that seemed very reasonable and logical of situational things, and but it also God gave me this, Holy Spirit, this insight on how the devil operates. And I texted it to Dr. H for a client and for any of his clients, because he works with people. I mean, the devil gets in with people, especially when they have disorders or things that a therapist would be working with, or even just general counseling with a teenager or a man with pain or whoever it is. And so the devil will hover around any chink hole of weakness. So it can be discouragement, it can be a physical thing, it can be an emotional. But that God really he did a big boom out of that corner. And so I know to be on it, and it cleared me from probably making some mistakes of decisions and things. So God bless his real presence in us. It's going to be ultra long. Too much detail, but like I said, when I get into it, it's like reliving it. I left out the part that there was a young man at the train station at the first stop. No, it was in Marseille before we were leaving. And I started to have this part. I said, oh, and I said, I said, he could speak English. He was French, but a student, like a teen, 18, 17. He knew of Stephen King anyway, because I said, I've been through an experience that reminds me of something that Stephen King could write about and embellish into something larger, with Patrice and all these different angles in her childhood. There was a lot more detail of her childhood growing up. Leave that out. I didn't tell you all that, but that was bizarre and at times hard to believe, and then other times you don't know, and all signals of demonic could be true or not, but he said, he says, well, yeah, he says, you know, and that's when I sort of decided, you know, that I didn't tell two of my other kids. My oldest daughter, it would have been too icky to hear. She's very sensitive, and things like that frighten. And my son, I don't know how he would react. At that time, I was afraid. I didn't want him to poo-poo the devil and make fun because it was such a serious thing. He's already, you know, on a very thin line, if not on a line at all of being okay. So he's left God really for the most part. Maybe all of it, I don't know. But it was just too Stephen King-ish to the point where any of my friends, I don't think they would have believed it. I don't know. At the time, I had more. I didn't tell Tomas full of it. Not the mind reading part. Not, and what got to me is that she knew things about me and my spiritual life. See, she knew that I had I knew these things and had these spiritual gifts. And that was really creepy and scary. So, all right, enough. I'll say God bless his real presence in us. And thank you, real presence, for being in us. Because my crucifix, I think, had impact with that shield. I think the prayer and my crucifix, there were different phases of this whole thing that I was saved. So thank you, God. So I did tell the one daughter, well, I said I'm safe. I just want you to know I'm safe. I'm okay. And she emailed back, you can't just leave it like that. Now I'm worried. What happened? What happened? And that helped to write it. It's still, I don't know. Maybe if you're sensitive, I don't know. I think those of you are more used to the temporal life and all. But it sure has given me empathy for people who are in crime situations and the ones who do get killed. I had a calm, but I had this thing that I needed to get out of there, and I couldn't. And how I was able to before she grabbed me, and God, she just dropped, and it was boom. So God is real. God and Holy Spirit and Jesus. If it's not your time, it's not your time. If it's your time, it's your time. Sweet dreams or beautiful morning or whatever time of day. God bless you all.